The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Hope you're doing all right. A lot to get into. Some reaction and thoughts from Trev Alberts as he was on the network last night. And what's Nebraska's future in the world of college football as things continue to change? Some thoughts there. A real question for you, 1 week away with Nebraska football. What are you confident in for 2023? We'll spend time there. Some Big Ten and Nebraska thoughts with Bill Bender coming up of the Sporting News. And then Gary Barnett will join us in hour two. Best bets time. A lot of college football this weekend and some Major League Baseball. Danny Burke from VSiN Sports Network will join us at around 5:40. Numbers to get in today at 489-1240. 489-1240. And can dial up across the state, 1-800-825-5865. Email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com, and give us a watch on the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. So it is National Bring Your Dog to Work Day. You may see the German roaming around in this studio, and she is all sorts of skittish. It's kind of, she kind of recognizes this building and these studios because about 4.5 years ago, in the spring of 2019, we adopted her a little bit later on in the day, but every Thursday we get a chance to see pups from the Humane Society and Pylock Pet Adoption. So that's how me and Gertie got to meet, and now she made the roadie back. She's a good car rider. She has yet to drink any of the water for me, and she's either growled or cowered, one of the two, with people that have tried to meet her. She kind of remembers you from the Purdue game, I think.
Well, I think when she got a sniff of me,
yes,
that she recognized me. But I will say it's a tough day for dogs with the Blue Angels flying overhead.
Yeah, she stopped in the hallway here and kind of said, "What the hell was that?" Did you see the Twitter picture?
Yeah.
How cool was that? You got all 5 Blue Angels above the stadium in a still shot. I think this is the Husker football Twitter feed.
Oh, just the at Huskers.
At Huskers, okay. So check that out on social media. It is awesome. It is cool. Lincoln will have the air show this weekend.
And I freaking love the Blue Angels, man.
Oh, they're so good.
I haven't missed a Blue Angels show in Lincoln. There was one that got, there was wildfire from Canada's. The smoke came down to Lincoln, and it scrubbed them for the day whenever I was sitting out there on the tarmac. So I went back the next day and just sat up in the Highlands and got a spot there. Went with my grandparents once. I legitimately have not missed the Blue Angels. And what's disappointing is I remember whenever I was still living at my dad's house, they used to do a turn, at least for that show, directly over his house. So I just sit at home and on Thursday and Friday be looking up at the sky ready for the Blue Angels.
On the back deck?
Just like afterburners on, just right over my dad's house.
Good sound effect.
Thank you. It was very good. They came somewhat close to my house today, but not to a point. I could hear them, but I couldn't see them from my house, which is disappointing. But I'll be there on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that.
It is going to be a lot of fun. And last time they were here, I know it was lawn chair time, and we watched. But, yeah, it is a little stressful. I did not bring the Labradoodle. She would have been easier, except when she gets excited, she pees everywhere. Now, I don't know that it would have hurt the carpet in here. That said, I didn't want to risk it, so I brought the German. She has yet to even play with her football. Occasionally, when we do the Friday home shows, those are more so the Saturday morning shows, you'll hear Gertie, or she'll make an appearance on camera with her blue football that squeaks. We have not found a way to keep that from squeaking, but it's her favorite ball of many, and she has that with her here. But I don't know. She won't take any water. She's just kind of nosing around the trash like snots. So we'll see if Will or Hooksy left any Taco Johns or anything like that in the trash can.
Speaking of Taco John's, and also speaking of how gross the carpets may be around here, have I ever told you the story about
I'd say they're vintage.
Have I ever told you the story of the time I spilled a whole bunch of baked beans on the floor in the hallway out there?
You reenacted The Office. Instead of chili, it was beans?
Yeah, well, the food was catered in for lunch, and I'm in here producing a high school football game, I believe, at the time. I was producing either football or basketball, can't remember, and there's a whole pan of baked beans in the fridge. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna get myself some dinner in here because I'm hungry. And I go to grab the baked beans with one hand. I didn't realize that the top was on loosely, and I also didn't think about the fact that the beans would shift as I tried to pick them up because I picked them up with one hand, on one end, so they all go to the other side. And then instantly, the top comes off, beans everywhere in the hallway. So I'm trying to do double duty of I have the sound cranked up to 10 in here so I can hear when we're going to commercial breaks while I'm furiously scrubbing the floors out there so nobody yells at me for spilling baked beans everywhere. That was probably my most stressful night. That was my first year working here. And I am telling you, it was a full, big vat of baked beans. When I tell you it was everywhere out in the hallway, it was everywhere. I spent the entire game scrubbing baked beans from the floor while coming in here and running commercial breaks. That was my worst night ever, I think, working in radio.
This carpet is the old, I think it's the old VFW building. Mm-hmm. So where we're stationed up on Cornhusker, and it is what it is, and it's pretty spacious, pretty winding, but it is, it's vintage. When I say carpet's vintage, it's vintage. So there's not much that would harm it. So your baked beans probably give it a little character. That's where I'm going.
Well, and the problem with baked beans is the fact that whenever you scrub baked beans, they tend to smush into things.
Yeah.
So that was a hellish night at the radio station for Elijah Herbel. I haven't told anybody about that story, but now I've told it to everyone who listens to the show and you. So.
Well, there we have it. Let's dive in a little bit from Trev before we dive into the confidence part of things. And, it's pretty interesting with Nebraska and where things are at because it's an ever-changing landscape. And Trev is so good about being a realist with where the program's at and where it needs to go. But first and foremost, and shoot me a screenshot on that. I didn't write any notes down on it, but Trev really laid out just where the world is. And it's pretty fascinating to think about Nebraska positioning themselves to get into the Big Ten when things were uncertain with the Big 12 plus years ago. So you made the first cut. You were still a proud, prominent, good and ranked program. You were still desirable. Your brand is desirable. Your fan base is desirable. And the eyeballs and the revenue you generate all check the box for a team you want in your conference, in your league. And Nebraska is a team you add. We'll get thoughts from Bill Bender and get thoughts from Gary Barnett on if that's still the case. So you wonder where things are going to be at with the next round of whatever the next round is. At some point, you wonder if things are going to be even more condensed. You wonder if the streaming services will team up and combine. But this is Trev, cut 4 here on the changing landscape, Nebraska's place, and it really raised some eyebrows yesterday just because you wonder if Nebraska's in danger of being left out of that next round of consolidation. There could be a day where the SEC and the Big Ten merge in the name of the almighty TV dollar. The way things are set up, you've got about a 7-year window to count some more money. You're part of this latest round of expansion that collected 4 teams from the Pac-12. Okay, what's next? Here's Trev.
What's really happening is that, the business model of the media companies has been disrupted. I mean, at the end of we all lived through this cable bundle package for years. It's what helped build the Big Ten network. It's what helped build the membership previously. And so as, the way live sporting events are consumed and how they're distributed changes, And now we're moving into a streaming model. And at this point, nobody's found a strategy around bundling streaming. I mean, ESPN Plus and Disney Plus and Hulu, it's been tried. And so as dollars become scarcer, you're going to see shifts in how alignment looks and essentially some contraction. So, it doesn't mean it's going to be tomorrow. The reality is a lot of these deals that were built on, for the next 5 or 6 years. From my seat, the vulnerabilities exist for some, and that it's go time, right? We can't fiddle the foul around anymore. We've got to win football games. We've got to work really hard as an institution on things like the AAU and academic profile, because in the end, as you move into a streaming model, Greg, I really think the data and analytics surrounding what your brand value is becomes more amplified, and it'll become clearer. And so we've got work to do, and we're going to do it. We've got the right coach in football to help us get there, and Coach Rule. I think we're in a good position, but I think lethargy cannot be part of what describes the Husker Athletic Department going forward.
I'd agree that Nebraska still is in a good position, but Elijah, you can't let recency and relevancy continue to drift the wrong way. You're still relevant. You've just not been recent. The last time you spent time in the top 10 was 2016. So there is urgency, and that gets down into maybe not what 2023 is, but where is Nebraska at in 2024 with their football program, and where are they in the pecking order of the Big Ten with 4 really good football programs coming in?
Well, and I think that's why you listen to Trev here, and it doesn't sound like it's urgent panic time for Trev, but he understands the gravity of the moment. Yeah,
he's real.
And thank God Trev's a straight shooter on this, because something we've discussed here, and people have commented, you and I have had the discussions of will there be cuts to these super conferences as time goes on to try to make the most profitable brand that you can. And I think reading in between the lines there on Trev, it's, we're safe right now. We're not at risk of being cut. But if the trend continues and it's 2030 and Nebraska's still struggling to make a bowl game, does Nebraska still have the same national brand pull that they have right now? Because Nebraska still draws in eyes and TV dollars, but Schmidt, you and I have kind of felt Husker fans becoming a little bit more apathetic year by year on the Husker football program. They're waiting for something good to happen, and I think if Matt Rule's able to turn things around in relatively short order, you'll be able to draw those eyes back. But at what point do you reach the point of no return where fans my age and fans younger than me are no longer watching Nebraska growing up? They're no longer caring about the Husker football program. So whenever 10-2 does happen again, because I don't think that's a matter of if, that is a matter of when. That's just the trends of college football. But the question is, can you get there soon enough that you haven't lost an entire generation of fans? Because if the young people in this state currently aged, 5 to 20, I mean, they haven't seen a winning season that they can remember for the most part. And if that trend continues, at what point do you lose them forever? And then at what point does Nebraska lose its relevancy in college football in terms of being able to draw eyes to the television?
Yeah, you got to keep reloading the fan base, and that is every 5 to 15-year-old that goes to the ball game with dad or grandpa or guardian or whoever, and are they hooked on it? Do they love it? And, oh, by the way, do they see a winner? Does the rest of college football see a winner? Does the Big Ten get a winner? You don't want that expiration date to ever happen with Nebraska football because Washington and Nebraska, awesome matchup 30 years ago, awesome matchup 12 years ago. Is it going to be an awesome matchup in 2024? Is it going to be an awesome matchup in 2030? To us that still remember football and Mark Brunell or Billy Joe Hobart or Billy Joe Gunrack, I'll always remember Washington coming into town number 1 in the country with Steve Ettman. And Nebraska didn't win that game, but hey, they had some dudes on both sides of the football, and it was really cool to see that as a showcase ABC, here's Keith Jackson moment for the rest of the college football world to see. You still want to be a choice in the Big Ten for those primetime ball games. You still want to be an option, not just because of your history and eyeballs, but because, you know what, it's a great matchup choice for the 2:30 game. It's a great matchup choice for NBC at 6:30. It's a really cool matchup choice for the Big Ten After Dark at 9 o'clock. dare you say. So you need to be part of that conversation. At what point does that window close on you because you're not winning? What point are you doing more Friday night games, or are you on BTN all the time? Because, well, we have time slots to use, we have teams to pick from, but you don't want to go away as being one of those top choices for a matchup. Mm-hmm. You want to be a draw. You want to be part of the draw. And that's why you got in, because there's so many possibilities of helmet games. Got to start playing, being competitive, winning those. And if you get back to 8-4, 9-4, and you're competitive, Trev went on to say he doesn't think there'll be divisions, then you're going to have a really fun but difficult schedule. If you're a college football fan, if you're a Nebraska fan, it's going to be fun. Remember the buzz of 2021? There was the, oh, God, look at Nebraska's schedule. But there was also the, man, this is pretty cool with all of the showcase games. It was Oklahoma. It was Ohio State. It was Michigan, on top of your Wisconsin and Iowa. So there's opportunity there, and it gets back into confidence. And I think what gives me confidence about Nebraska being able to right the ship is getting back to physical football and being able to trade punches once again.
And right or wrong, 2021 is probably the last time Nebraska was nationally relevant on TV, because people around the country wanted to see how Nebraska was going to find a way to lose this week.
Hey, they'll cover, and it'll break somebody's heart in Omaha. Okay, we'll get you to Bill Bender. That's on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in with the sporting news. It's college football time. Bill Bender joins us at Bill Bender 92. And Bill, we've got a week here in Nebraska till the trek to Minnesota. The countdown is on. How are you doing?
I'm ready. I was ready to talk games and spreads and coaches and narratives. And what happened yesterday? We had another little turn on the realignment cycle. So, yeah, it's been a wild summer, but I'm ready for these guys to kick it off and start playing on the field.
I am too, and it's been kind of just a crazy summer with the Big Ten's additions. But I want to get your thoughts on something Trev Alberts touched on with his radio show last night, and that is the topic of, I don't want to call it relegation, but there may be a day someday soon where the SEC and the Big Ten and some of the other halves just merge into one little mini NFL. And I wanted your take on the Nebraska brand. Is Nebraska in danger, or would Nebraska be in danger of being left out of, I guess, a core group of college football names?
No, I don't think so. It's interesting. I read Trev's comments, too, and got to talk to him at Big Ten Media Day about Matt Rule, but I didn't touch on realignment with him because we didn't really see it coming. But, Nebraska, if we're being honest about a program assessment, and it's not like the 90s, everybody knows that, but I think the interest level, the ratings, the attendance, the things that TV networks look at still favor the Huskers. And I think right now they're in a decent spot of, if you were ranking the top Big Ten brands, and this isn't programs, this is brands, I still think Nebraska would, 5 or 6 right now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super fair based on the last 6 years where they're not even over 500 in Big Ten play.
Right, but it's not my lifetime. Of course I know that they've had great years as national championship program. Their national championship drought, you could look at it this way, too. You could say, hey, Penn State hasn't won a national title since '86. What are you talking about, right? Sure. Michigan and Nebraska split in '97. The Wolverines haven't won one since then. Wisconsin hasn't won one in my lifetime. So I still think they have that brand cachet. That's me, though, as a traditionalist of college football. I tell you what, Chris, I've been looking at college football. I was thinking about this the other night. College football now versus college football 40 years ago. And I took a peek at some of the conferences, and I just can't help wonder if some of these teams might not wish it was still like that instead of what we got right now.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. It was a simpler time. I know Georgia and OU and Switzer sued for their ability to be on TV as much as they wanted to be based on their value. And it has opened the proverbial Pandora's box to now you look at what the Big Ten's got set up schedule-wise. I mean, the quadruple header we smile about because, well, we're in the Big Ten and Big Ten country, but you have some programs and some conferences that are going extinct or could be.
Yeah, and you just don't want people to be left out. I think that's this round of realignment, and I kind of said this morning in an editorial meeting. I said, you really look hard at realignment. I mean, SMU has the potential. They're going to win if they get in a Power 5 conference, right? They're going to win. CF wins. Cal and Stanford win if the ACC picks them up. Big losers are Oregon State and Washington State because they're probably going to end up in the Mountain West Conference at this point. So it is a little bit of relegation in that sense. And Trev's on to something because the more I think about it, if we head toward this NFL model, it's only going to be – I could ask you the same question, Chris. How many programs matter at that point? 50, maybe?
Yeah, 50. I mean, you'll have a top 50. You'll have – I mean, you look at the SEC, and you've got some real juggernauts and historical names. You still have, the Miamis of the world that are there. Same with Florida State. You go into Texas, and you got the A&Ms and Texases. But quite frankly, the TCUs and Baylors have been better than Texas the last 10 to 12 years. And then you have some of those other programs that are decent enough in football, but, man, their basketball program's still something to write home about, the other sports as well. So I don't know what that number would be. Would you look at it? I mean, what do you have in the NFL?
32.
32. You could say 32 and put Green Bay at the top of the list. That'll be fine. And then I had to get one in.
No, do it. That's fine, man. I want to get the Lambeau someday, but you could draw a line at 32, but I think you could be safe at 40 with college football.
Yeah, and I think that's what this ACC move is all about. And it's kind of the move within the move to me is if the ACC is proactive and grabs Stanford and Cal and SMU and has a late-night TV slot, that they're preventing the SEC and Big Ten from just doing this and grabbing the 40 to 50 schools that they want. And maybe, I mean, the thing that Trev brought up that I've always been interested in is, will they ever kick a school out? Now, I go back to that 1984 discussion. The Big Ten at that time, you look at the power conferences, the only two conferences that haven't had somebody leave are the Big Ten and the SEC. Those are the destination conferences. Those are the ones you go to be in. The ACC expanded too. I guess they didn't lose, but they lost Maryland. Maryland went to the Big Ten.
Bill, whenever you talk about the fact that the Big Ten and the SEC hasn't been losing anybody, I think that's kind of what Trev was getting at in the comments last night, that, you know what, that might not be the case for forever, not because the schools choose to, but because the Big Ten decides that schools aren't of value. So I want to get your take on a system of promotion and relegation, similar to what we see in Premier League soccer. Do you think that could be viable for the future of college football?
I don't watch a lot of soccer, so you would have to explain to me exactly how it works, but the concept is not foreign to me. Like what if they, in 10 years, they're like, hey, Rutgers, you haven't pulled your weight. Hey, Northwestern, you've been terrible for this many years, and then they start relegating teams. And that's why I say when you look at that original Big Ten from 40 years ago, and then you kind of peel off a couple teams, if I was branding the Big Ten, I think that there's probably, this doesn't count the West Coast schools, but probably 6 or 7 that would be worthy of that super conference status when you check all the boxes. And I'm talking tradition, revenue, wins and losses, marketability, those kind of NIL, how they're doing NIL, how they're doing transfer portal. How are they considered like an organization? It's like kind of like fast food restaurants. Is this a major corporation or just a local chain? And the game is set up for the major corporations now.
Bill Bender's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Bill, want to get into a little bit of Nebraska and Minnesota. What in your eyes is a good showing? Yeah, a win would be nice for Nebraska. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but can you make a basis for maybe how the season will go off of this first game, and what type of weight do you put in it for Nebraska at Minnesota Thursday?
Well, I mean, with Coach Rule, I mean, I was around him a lot at Big Ten Media Day. I was around Jeff Sims a lot at Big Ten Media Day, and kind of my takeaway there, and you heard him talk about it, and it's cliche in some ways, but they talked about being a disciplined team. So to me, that means are there a bunch of false starts? Are there holding calls? Are there the things that have happened in Nebraska in the past couple of years that have led to so many one-score losses? If this is a one-score game, does Nebraska win it? Those are the things I'm looking for. I think it should be a fun game. Minnesota's got a little bit of sleeper value. They are the only Big Ten West team whose starting quarterback isn't a transfer. I found that kind of interesting. The rest of the schools are playing a little bit of transfer roulette, and that's going to make some for some unpredictable first couple weeks for these schools. I could tell you I think this will happen with Jeff Sims or Cade McNamara at Iowa or Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin, but the truth is you're not going to know until you see it.
Bill, whenever you look at the Big Ten West as a whole, who do you think, as of right now, has your advantage to go have the honor of playing either Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State in the Big Ten title game? And I say that jokingly, obviously, because of the Big Ten West history there, but it feels pretty wide open sitting here in Nebraska, the Big Ten West, as it always does, really. Who do you think has the advantage? Because you look at Iowa, their offense last year wasn't great, which might be the understatement of the year, but they've made some progress through the offseason. Wisconsin's got a brand new head coach. Nebraska's got a brand new head coach. Purdue's got a brand new head coach. Northwestern's got a brand new head coach. Everything about the Big Ten West just feels like you're going to be setting yourself up for failure if you try to make predictions. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do. Make a prediction on the Big Ten West.
Other than that change, here's what's the same in the Big, last year I kind of made a joke that back in July, you wouldn't have heard me last July saying, hey, you know what? Late November, Purdue, Illinois is going to be huge, and the winner's going to go to Indianapolis. I didn't say that. I think that'll be there are two teams that are going to be unpredictable as well. But I went with the old standby. I went with Wisconsin. As much as I've talked about Matt Rule, and I like that hire, I like Luke Fickell too. I think he's got a little bit of a better foundation in Wisconsin to work with. And the hire of Phil Longo could really change the makeup of that program. It's going to look different. He promised it was going to look different. But I like their talent, and I think they're the safest when you're throwing darts to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's right on. And to me, it's going to come down to Iowa, Wisconsin. I think Iowa's got to go to Wisconsin. Does that sound right? I don't have the...
They do.
Yeah, the Wisconsin schedule in front of me. I know Wisconsin also gets Ohio State, but I think they host Ohio State. That may not mean much, but it's better than the alternative, and that's going to the shoe. And, I just think, to your point about what Wisconsin's got, good offensive line, stud running back, a quarterback that could be beyond a manager with Mordecai, and 18 total starters back. Fickell can play defense and coach defense, so I think Wisconsin's going to be really, really tough. And I think Iowa will be really good, too. That may be Iowa's, I know Penn State comes to Kinnick, and they have Ohio State, too, this year, too, I believe. So Iowa could have a 9-3, 8-4 type season, but it could be a more complete team, Bill, with what additions they've had on offense. And I think their defense is really good. They lost a lot of first-round talent.
Sure. And, the key to that is Cade McNamara, and will he keep that? He's like the perfect Iowa quarterback, by the way.
Yeah,
accurate, good leader, going to have I think they will be better. Will they be 30 points a game good? Probably not. But that's not their style, and Kirk still finds a way to win. So there is a case for every team in the division. And you mentioned Iowa, you mentioned Wisconsin. They're the two safe ones. And the other additions that Iowa made, Erica All, the tight end, and Cam Brown, the wide receiver from or Caleb Brown, from Ohio State, they're going to have some more weapons on that side of the ball, and they're going to have some experience. But like you said, I'm actually looking at how do you replace a guy like Jack Campbell? How do you replace a guy like Kayvon Merriweather on that defense, Luke Van Ness, first-round pick? So they've got some holes to fill on the other side this year, which is kind of a different narrative that we haven't really talked about a lot.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Bill Bender with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Bill, over in the East, Ohio State has been picking up some momentum, at least according to Vegas, in terms of finally being able to take down Michigan and be Big Ten champions, or maybe even be national champions. Vegas has liked what they've seen over the past about month from Ohio State. So I want to get your thoughts on the Big Ten East and where it stands. Is Michigan still the favorite in your mind?
They're even. They really are. It's a coin flip. And Michigan's made it a coin flip now. So despite the Harbaugh suspension and everything that went with that, which was totally bizarre, Ohio State's got the most All-American talent in the country. I can tell you that. Our preseason All-Americans are out this week. Ohio State's got more guys on that list than anybody else. And it starts with a guy that a lot of people think is the best player in the country, in Marvin Harrison. So they're loaded. They haven't picked a quarterback yet, which is interesting to me. But I think both of them are going to play early in the season. And they have the 3 big stage games against Notre Dame, Penn State, and then ultimately Michigan. But, Michigan, Ohio State, and even Penn State, you got to consider them. It's going to be a really fun division to watch.
I want to go away from college football for a moment, and I know you put this out in June, and the countdown continues with the top 50 phenoms, right? Yeah, the hype. Did you buy in? Are you more, as a Packer fan, do you think more about the Favre get? You traded for him, I know, from Atlanta, but the Favre get and then Landon, Aaron Rodgers, those two acquisitions, or do you still privately fume about the Tony Mandriches of the world?
That's the one that gets every Packers fan going, because when we had this article that we did at Sporting News, when the conversation turned to Tony Mandrich, a couple of our younger editors were like, I've never really heard of him. And I was like, well, why don't you look at the next 3 names in the NFL draft then? And it was, it's Dion and Barry Sanders and Derek Thomas.
Yeah.
Like, those guys were pretty good. That's why Green Bay fans are still mad about it. So, it's amazing. And hype is what it is. I know we retweeted that today based on the Strasburg news, but it's, I always, when we did that list, I just kept saying the way hype is now has changed so much than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was baseball cards. That's how you did hype, and maybe a video recording of a guy in high school. But now it's everywhere. It's early, and it's almost harder to deal with that hype, I think, because you guys deal with recruiting. There's 15-year-old kids that are hyped up as the next Patrick Mahomes. That's the name we're doing now.
Were you in the Greg Jeffries era where you had to get that Fleer rookie card?
Oh, yeah. I had them all. That's why I say the one for me, if I was ranking number 1 after LeBron's number 1,
yeah,
and he is, and that's easy. But for me, the next guy, and some of this has grown up in Ohio, it's Ken Griffey Jr.
Yes.
We knew about him when he was at Cincinnati Moeller. We knew he was the son of Ken Griffey Sr. My son's 12. I can't impress on him enough how cool Ken Griffey Jr. was. I still think he's the coolest athlete maybe ever.
He was must-see, man. Breakfast table, 13-inch black and white, cables just kind of new. There's Dan Patrick and Oberman or Kilborn doing his highlights. And we're slow playing our serials so we can see Ken Griffey Jr. and his debut. It was a triple. And that was the guy we got on. We got the Ken Griffey Jr., the father and son poster. And then it continued to blow up. We'd go to Cincy games if they were playing the Cubs. We'd try and get there to see when he went to Cincinnati. We didn't, and then we'd try and see the Mariners. Who in the hell would ever want to go see willingly the Mariners pre Ken Griffey Jr.?
Right.
But you did. Dad's like, all right, where are we going on vacation? We're going to go see the Royals. Yes, but who do you want to see him play? It went from the Yankees to those McGuire and Canseco Bash Brother days to, all right, here's Ken Griffey Jr., let's lock in. You're right about that. And you smile about it now, but man, did he deliver. He absolutely delivered.
He did, and we had fun with that list. Now, the college football side was a little bit harder because you can get the college from high school, but the hype doesn't always materialize. You could use Ron Paulus countlessly in that discussion, but, there are guys that have come in through college that, Adrian Peterson's one, where I thought from day one, I was like, NFL star. Don't need to see him play another down in college. He's an NFL star. And there's been a handful of guys like that, but it rarely happens anymore. You need that 3 years in college, and I still maintain that. every time that discussion comes up. I think I can count on one hand the number of college football players that I thought first time I saw him play is like, he could be done in college and I'm good. There aren't too many like that.
Bill, to bring us back to college football here, I think the most hyped prospect right now in the world of college football is probably Caleb Williams, following what he did at Oklahoma, the Heisman season last year, and the weapons that USC offense has this year. I think a lot of people, as you kind of laid out the Patrick Mahomes comparison, see Caleb Williams as the next quote-unquote Patrick Mahomes. And I want to get your thoughts on not just USC and Caleb Williams, what they face in 2023, but really the Pac-12 as a whole, as it's their swan song. Do you think that the Pac-12 could send a team to the college football playoff in their final year being a conference?
We'll find out. It's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be some bitter feelings, I'm sure. And the thing that the conference has going for it is a bunch of good quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. I mean, you go all the way down to Shedeur Sanders and Dante Moore, potentially. So it is a loaded conference. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think we have USC in the playoff at Sporting News, but the coin flip between them, the second SEC team, and Clemson or Florida State. So what can go right for the conference can go wrong. It's kind of like last year. They had all these good quarterbacks and great games, and you kind of cannibalize yourself in that 14 format. I do know a lot of people are going to be rooting for Oregon State if Oregon State finally breaks through because they don't have a conference and they're getting relegated and all those things we talked about earlier.
Bill Bender's with us. Bill, have you seen the Swamp Kings on Netflix with Urban?
Yeah, I've seen them all. I've seen Manziel. I've seen Swamp Kings. I even watched BS High because that happened here in Ohio, unfortunately. Swamp Kings is with it because it obviously omitted some things.
Yes.
But it did show, and it does remind you. I mean, Urban and Tebow was pretty darn good on the field, but it's those things off the field that we also remember that didn't probably get touched on as much. But I keep reminding people, Urban has the third best, highest winning percentage of all time. So, it was good. It was not great. It was good. Manziel was okay, and the BS High one was probably the most infuriating as somebody that's been around Ohio high school football his whole life.
Bill will get you out on this. Bill Bender, Sporting News. Follow him all college football season. Read him, sportingnews.com, of course, at Bill Bender 92. Are you going to get to a Nebraska game, either home or away, or do you have your schedule laid out? Is there anything that you'd circle? I know a year ago we were talking about Ireland. But
I wouldn't
now
have came back. I would have just stayed.
We had a great time. It was wonderful. But any game that you'd want to get to for Nebraska?
I'm hoping. Our schedule's pretty flexible here early in the season. We'll see how it goes. I know one that we have circled for September that I know I'm going to be at will be Ohio State Notre Dame. That will create a big overreaction either way. And that's why, much like we watched Nebraska and Northwestern as a tone setter, I think Saturday's a tone setter for the Irish. Everybody's going to be watching. Sam Hartman, Notre Dame, second year for Marcus Freeman. We know that the pressure of coaching there, and we'll see how it goes. But definitely that one, and I'm hoping to. I really want to get up to Nebraska. I want to see you guys out there. I love talking football with Nebraska people, and I'm not kissing up, but you guys love football as much as I do, and it's just so fun to have these conversations.
Bill, it's awesome to get caught up with you. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thank you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you one final time this hour. Gary Barnett, 10 minutes away. Thoughts on the relegation topic from Barney, Nebraska, and their plight in the Big Ten this season, year one for Matt Rule. A week from today, we're in Minneapolis at the Graduate, leading you up till kickoff. Ahead of Nebraska, Minnesota, 489-1240. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law, and personal injury is something they can handle. And if you've been affected with a personal injury accident, you can count on Dyer Law and the team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call Dyer Law and the team today at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about, visit with that trusted professional with Dyer Law about your personal injury claim. That is dyer.law. Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. Plenty of comments during our sit down with with Bill Bender on Nebraska. We got into it with him. Dion jumped in early on this, meant to get to it earlier, but we played in simple, have to start winning very soon. Agreed. I'm not of the mind, though, that Nebraska is in danger of being left behind, but Elijah, why risk it? And that's kind of what Trev was saying.
Well, yeah, it's exactly that. And I mean, I personally kind of like the idea of promotion and relegation, not because of what it means for Nebraska as of right now, but I think it leads to more competitive games all across the board. I mean, if you eventually get to a day with, say, 50 top teams in the top conference, the ones competing for the college football playoff, and then everyone else in a lower tier, what's stopping you from saying the bottom 5 teams are going to get sent down to that bottom conference, and hey, the top 5 teams, whoever made the playoff, if you will, in that bottom conference, they're going to be coming up and joining the big boys next year. And if you can stake your claim there and have a successful season, you get to hang around and get the TV media rights deal. I think it leads to a more competitive college football, and people have bemoaned the potential loss of the importance of some regular season games. Well, that brings it right back. Whenever you're in a promotion or relegation battle at the end of the season, hey, guess what? That game on Black Friday, I know you're sitting at 3-8 right now, but it means something, because if you lose it, you're going to be down in the bottom division next year, and if you win it, you're not going to be. I think there's elements to that I think can solve some issues in college football. It's not perfect, but there's no perfect solution in college football. I just see that as a way to keep college football interesting and exciting if you do eventually move to a point where it's a super conference of, say, 40, 50 teams of these Helmet Games Power 5 currently schools that are in competition for a college football playoff.
I think your cut line could be 40 teams. What I don't think you can do, and money may blow this out of the water, but you don't want your college football regular season to be an afterthought like the college basketball season. Locally, it'll generate some buzz, and hey, is Nebraska taking on Michigan? Is Ohio State coming to town? You're going to go, right? If your basketball team's fun to watch and they're winning, you're going to go. But what you don't have is people to just all of a sudden chime in and tune in for December for the playoff. When you've had a ramp up of regular season, you still need that to matter, and it does. But I think you could have your top 40, so to speak, and then if you're outside that 40, you're still playing, you're still on TV, but you're Oregon State now, where you're a good football program, but now where do they go?
Well, I like this thought from Matthew here before we get out this hour. The team that's coming up from the bottom conference would have to play the team above them to replace their spot.
It could work. It could work. More emails. Coach Barnett's on the way. His thoughts on all of this. Hail Varsity Hour 2, presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it, Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. We welcome in Hall of Fame coach Gary Barnett, Colorado Northwestern, the Missouri Tigers Hall of Fame. Coach, a week away, man. Are you getting goosebumps, or are you just hammering film? How you doing?
Well, you know what it's like. I'm not getting goosebumps. I got too many things to do. I have 100 guys I've got to learn new numbers and names for, and where they're from. That's the big deal, because they're all from all over the place. So I spend most of my time just testing myself to know who they are. But no, I go to practice every day, still get a little golf in, and I do have crunch time coming up, though. So it's getting pretty busy right now.
Are you learning Twitter handles, Coach? Is that going to be a thing from practice?
No, that's not going to be a thing by Coach Barnett. No, or Mark Johnson. I can tell you that.
Okay, so, I was just wondering if because that's pretty unique.
What? I'm wondering what they're going to put on the back of their jerseys. In fact, I'm going to ask that question today when I go to practice. Are they going to put their Twitter handle or their social media handle on their jersey, or are they going to put their name on their jersey? That's a good question to ask.
I want to get your thoughts on just what do you expect? I know what you want as a head coach, But in a year one, with a new offense, with new personnel, and this relates to Nebraska, this relates to Colorado, and I know Coach Primes knows what his son is at quarterback, but you don't know all the pieces. You think you do, but what the heck can you expect in game one? TCU for you guys, Nebraska's at Minnesota. What's a fair take on a bar to reach for the offenses?
Well, one of the challenging things I think for you as a head coach, the first time you work with a coordinator that's got a different offense than what you have used in the past, is you in your mind have a way of calling plays and sequencing things, and your new coordinator may see it completely different, and so you gotta hold your tongue. You've got to buy into what he's doing and give him your confidence and give him the full reign on the calling this game. There'll be some calls that Coach Sanders is going to make. I'll tell you. He's on their decisions like go for it or don't go for it. We're in 4-down territory, be conservative, things like that. But when you see you're with a new coordinator and you watch him call a game for the first time, you're going, why and what's he doing? But you can't say that, and so you just got to settle in and trust your guys, and especially if your son's the quarterback. So I'm gonna be interested to see if Coach Sanders can bite that lip and let the coordinators have a free run.
When you look at Jeff Sims and Satterfield, and there's familiarity, of course, with Coach Rule and Satterfield, and really liked how South Carolina ended the year, right? They really wowed college football with what they did against Tennessee and then upsetting Clemson. Now, Spencer Rattler's incredible. Different quarterback, but really fun skill set in Sims. If you look at putting a game plan together, I think that Nebraska is going to lean on their run game, being physical, a couple of tight ends. They're thin at receiver, but with Sims, I mean, you can do a lot of things with him, and I don't know that asking him to throw 30 times a game is the right take, but I also think you can, based on your opponent, Coach Barnett, decide to make him a runner versus just a scrambler. And I look at Nebraska maybe to do that here in a week.
Yeah, I think that you're pretty much going to center that offense around him, and you're going to have to let him run, I think, and it's going to be a great weapon. That's the only time you have 10 blockers is when your quarterback runs the ball. So. It's an advantage for an offense that can do that, especially if you can come out and be physical early on, because teams just aren't as physical in fall practices as they used to be. And so you have a big advantage if you can come out of fall camp with a very physical football team.
Really enjoyed some of Joel Klatt's comments this week on his podcast. The topic of Matt Rule came up, and he talked about culture and the tone that was set at Baylor by Rule, and then trying to kind of rebuild the culture in Lincoln. And it's apples and oranges, Baylor and Lincoln. Coach, talk a little bit about that culture element and how culture helps you win. I mean, it's such a talking point, and it's been a talking point in Lincoln for a lot of years because of all the change. But from your perspective here, tell me truly how culture can translate from a meeting room or team building to moments in the fourth quarter on a Saturday.
Well, culture builds expectations, is what it does. It fuels expectations. And the right culture won't let you think the wrong way. The culture that you want as a football coach is one that can't wait to get to the fourth quarter, can't wait to get to the tough situations, because it creates a set of expectations for you and demands for you as a player and on you as a coordinator or on you as a coach. And so that's what culture does. Culture creates expectations, and it supports expectations. And it doesn't happen overnight. It gets built. You don't just take a pill and all of a sudden you got culture. It's created over time. And, it's a metamorphosis. Time, pressure, and heat is what brings about the change and creates that culture. So you've got to have all three of those, and that's what happens. And when you've got a culture, then when someone new comes in, he has to adapt to that culture. And he's got to know, I'm not coming in to change this culture. I'm coming in to be changed. And so all of a sudden now, everybody that touches your players, everybody that talks to your players is part of that culture and part of the expectations that get presented and or an awareness that you have it and you buy into it.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, over-under win total at 6.5 for Nebraska. If you want to predict, great, but tell me why they can go 6 or better.
Well, first of all, they don't play Penn State or Ohio State. Okay. That's a big plus. You're opening with a Big Ten. You open with a Big Ten team that really doesn't know what you're going to do, and then you come back and you're playing a team that was 1-11 2 years in a row practically. So and got a whole new team, whole new coach. So there's 2 games in the get-go plus your scheduled wins that a lot of teams have. So. To me, you throw in the fact that you don't play Ohio State, you don't play Penn State. There's a good start on your 7 wins right there. So you got to stay healthy. Obviously, everybody does, but you got to keep your quarterback healthy. But Matt Rule knows how to build culture, and he's going about it the right way, slowly and assuredly. So I think there's 7 out there for Nebraska.
I'm interested. What are the expectations around Colorado this year with Coach Prime? I mean, what's your read on putting a number next to CU this year?
Well, if you just poll people within 60-mile radius of Colorado, you think we might win the national championship. But, just on paper, knowing the cultures, knowing the climate here, I would have, 3.5 is the over-under at Vegas. And I would have said, if you win 4, that's done. You're doing a pretty good job. But I'm changing my mind a little bit. I'm moving more towards 5 and 6 as to, after what I've seen and what I think is possible with this football team.
What's changed your mind?
Time. The fact that he's dealing with, Coach Sanders is dealing with 70 men. He doesn't have a lot of boys. He's got 70 men out there, and they've already gone through all the changes that happen to you when you first start college. They don't have those things. They're men. They've done this. I just think that watching their coordinators work, their organizations, how smart they've been in practices, I'm thinking a little better than 4.
Coach, we talk a lot about momentum for Nebraska, and can they get that big win? Can they string some things together and kind of jumpstart a year one? And it was a Hail Mary, right? We go back to the Riley era. BYU, his opener went sideways. Nebraska gets the game canceled, and then Colorado beats Nebraska in year 1 of Frost. So it's been some time. Speak to that moment of momentum for you, if you can, about your stops at Northwestern, and then also when you came back to Colorado. Was there a turning point moment that helped you get downhill in a good way?
Well, at at Northwestern, we open up with Notre Dame, and we beat Notre Dame. Now that should change all the momentum in the world for you. For, the most losing football team in the country for 40 years. But then we come back and we lose after being up 27-0 to Miami of Ohio. We lose 28-27. So all that momentum just sort of fell right out of the boat. But 3 weeks later, we go to Michigan and we beat Michigan. That was a momentum. At that point in time, you're legitimate. At that point in time, you believe in yourself. And, that sort of happened to us at Colorado as well. We beat A&M. We beat in 2001. We beat A&M. We beat, I forgot who it was, back to back. And so, and then finally Iowa State in a big game before we played Nebraska. Yeah. So, we were building then. And, but the one you really remember, or I do, is the Northwestern thing.
Mm. Coach, you had a chance to watch Swamp Kings at all on the Florida Gators teams with Urban Meyer?
No, I haven't, but I'm going to have to get up in the middle of the night and watch that sometime.
Well, yeah, it's pretty interesting, and just to see how Florida was built. There were not everything at Florida was covered, so we'll circle back to that when you get a chance to see it. Nebraska lost their president, Ted Carter. He took the Ohio State job. From a coaching perspective, talk to me about the administrative relationships. Carter was a big advocate for Matt Rule. They really connected. Now that's not there anymore after the first of the year. Was that something you were in tuned to, not only your AD, but also the president of the university from an alignment standpoint, philosophy standpoint? How big was that for you?
Huge. It's absolutely. We don't do probably what we did at Northwestern without a change in presidents, and the president we had was a really good guy, solid. He was a tough guy, but the new president, Henry Beaning, came in, and it was a completely different attitude. Same thing with athletic directors; they can be huge if they're the right guy. And so if you're a coach, and I lost my president at Colorado 6 months after I was here too. And it ended up being a really challenging situation as a result. You don't know it right away. You got to go through fire first for you to really find out where people are. And so for me, that was huge. An AD change was problematic as well for me. So I think any coach that loses the guy that hires him, either president or athletic director or a combination of that, like I did, it's really problematic for the football coach. So dig in.
A few more minutes. Gary Barnett continues with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Good stuff from Barney on, that Nebraska brand if things get shook up in 7 years. I know that's been a big talking point, but based on some of Trev's comments, he's not resting or putting his feet up. Win now is kind of the mentality, and you got to have it, get back to some recency and some relevancy. More with Coach Barnett on the way here. We'll have a little bit of time. Danny Burke also joined us, VSiN Sports Network. His thoughts on the college football weekend ahead. What do you think of the Irish and the number they're laying? College football is here. NFL preseason and some Major League Baseball with Danny. Reminder about you and buckling up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Podcast is for you. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Can download the segment or the entire show. Also, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. More with Coach Barnett on Hail Varsity Radio continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Thank you for those kind words. I'm interested also, Coach, we may get to a point as expansion happens and mergers continue that you just have one league where you could have an SEC and Big Ten combo or the halves of college football. I'm asking you about Nebraska's brand value. And Trev Alberts had his weekly show last night, and there's urgency in Trev. There's urgency in his voice about Nebraska needing to get it picked up again and start winning. Brand is one thing, eyeballs another for Nebraska, but they've not won in a while. Would they be in danger? Could they be in danger? I want your outside perspective of being left out of that in crowd of top college football programs.
I think the only danger that they would be in is if they just stink it up this year or next year. I mean, their brand is good. It's about value. It's going to be about value. Do you bring value? Do you sell out crowds? Do you get TV eyeballs? Do you bring money into this group and value? Are you something that is a welcome piece of this conference or this big league that we're talking about? So I think Nebraska's okay, but I think they're fine. I think they're better than a lot of people. But they really do have to win. And it's, not this year, but over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, as this sort of thing continues to unravel, they've got to provide value. There's got to be proof of that value.
Last thought, Coach, and this has been going around with the media days and different college coaches being pulled on things outside of football. You've seen it with all the ACC coaches. You've seen it SEC coaches, Big Ten coaches, and favorite music, favorite movie, favorite food. So I'm going to ask you your favorite band, your favorite movie, and I know I think I'm going to put money on barbecue ribs, but I'm going to ask you your favorite food.
Oh, really? You're going to do this to me.
Do you not?
My favorite.
Are you not down? I mean,
All right, my favorite band's going to be a tie between the Ozark Mountain Daredevils and the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
My favorite movie might be Tin Cup. Okay. Mm-hmm. My favorite food. Come on, Mary, give me some help here. Anything with Brussels sprouts and cucumbers.
Really?
So,
all right. Yeah. I thought you were going to go St. Louis rack of ribs on me. That's what I would.
I don't like St. Louis ribs. I got to go pork loin, baby backs. If I'm going to do that. All right. I'm a rib guy. but I like fish. I'm a big fish guy. Sea bass, particularly.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Thank you for answering that. It's gonna.
Actually, I'm going to back up, Chris. I'm going to back up. Shrimp. Any kind of shrimp is my favorite food. So.
You just can't decide. I love it. Ozark, yeah. What was their hit? I'm sure they had many.
Jackie Blue, if you want to get to heaven. So the lead singer in that band, Steve Cash, and I were roommates in college. And so
really?
I was there when they started this whole thing, and then they made it big. And Steve's passed on, but they're legends around my part of the world.
That's really cool. Man, did he ever offer you a backup singing gig? Can you carry a tune?
No, but we both wrote books, and we exchanged the books, and I think he wrote a better one than I did. But no, it was crazy watching those guys just get famous, and so that's my group.
Man, good stuff. Coach, you have a good week. Thanks for the time.
All right, Chris. Talk later.
Good to hear from Gary Barnett, the Ozark Mountain Daredevils and Rolling Stones. And I did a little research. Yeah, they were fraternity brothers and fraternity roommates.
No way.
Yeah. So late 60s, 70s, when that band goes off, couple of top 40 hits, that's his college roommate.
Well, and imagine just like what's got to be going on behind the scenes of like whenever you get back together and I'm more famous than you. No, I'm more famous than you.
They're
probably trying to one up each other. That's probably why they both did so well in their careers. They're just trying to one up their old college roommate.
Well, they're both like from kind of the Springfield, Chesterfield area of Missouri. So just kind of smaller town dudes, and that ended up at Missouri. Good stuff from Coach Barnett, but we talked to Bill Bender about it. Elijah, we heard from Barney there on just where Nebraska's at. And it makes this season pretty fascinating about Nebraska getting back to a winning program, back to their winning ways. I'm interested here as to the how and the why Nebraska does that, and we'll know more from Coach Rule. We'll have plenty of thoughts on his press conference tomorrow. But defense, I think we feel pretty good about, in a sense that it's going to be different. And you had Rule lay that out there. It's in that Osborne mold of, okay, let's do something that is a real pain in the backside to prepare for, where you have only 3 or 4 days and you're new, you're an outlier. Nebraska is that defensively right now, similar to what the option was for other defenses to prep for once everybody moved away from the wishbone and you had more 1-back, 3 wide-out sets. Nebraska stayed with the I formation option, but above all, it's power football. Give me power football, and I believe that's been an emphasis, and you are good at what you emphasize. You're supposed to be. Nebraska's emphasized physical play. Nebraska's emphasizing physical line play and a physical offense with a running quarterback. Listen, Wisconsin's not going to have a running quarterback. Illinois is going to be more pro style. Iowa has a mobile but not running quarterback. Where are we at in the rest of the West? I mean, Minnesota's quarterback is athletic and mobile but not running.
He's dual threat, but I don't think he's a threat to beat you in either of those threats. If that makes sense.
He can do enough to hurt you, but it's not anything they're going to hang their hat on.
Yeah,
because they're gonna line up and play rugby and hand off to their I-back. Mm-hmm. So Nebraska has a potential difference maker at quarterback athletically when it comes to running. And Nebraska has maybe a difference maker with that running back room, assuming the offensive line gets to where they need to be. I think that's an area of confidence if you're a Nebraska fan, and we talked about that to start the show off. Where are you confident at? What makes you confident for Nebraska to get to that 6 or better number? And it's going to be the defense. It's going to be the offensive line. It's also going to be your special teams and field position. Mm-hmm. Are you hosed? I mean, is it 1st and 10 at the 20 every time you start a possession? If your defense gets a stop and you field a punt and you get a return, are you starting out with a shorter field? Even when Nebraska had great teams, but they had tight games, I think of the Missouri game, 97 Missouri game. The Shevin Wiggins kick 6 and Davison's catch. And that was a 2-minute drill by a non-throwing team. But what set it up? He had a shorter field to go because Bobby Newcomb had about a 17-yard punt return. I mean, that's going to be big this year. I'm excited to see where they're at a week from today and then how they grow from it. And I think you can be confident in Nebraska's identity, and that's going to be a running, rugged, tough football team. You give me that, if I'm a Nebraska fan, I think you can do some damage, and you can be in it. And you can also hold on to the football. Hold on to the football. That's not going to wear out your defense because you're going to have some smaller / tweener guys in that back 8. And they're going to be moving before the snap in all likelihood because you don't want them. Reimer's awesome, but you don't want him having a jack with too many guards. You want him moving so there's not a clean shot on him. Mm-hmm. So that's some areas of confidence. Difference defensively, being a different scheme, and something that's a pain in the neck to prepare for. And then push comes to shove, you've got a physical offense that can just slam away, hammer away.
And I'm not sure I'm confident in Nebraska's offensive ability to do that just yet. I'm going to wait and see mode. But where I am confident is kind of.
I think they'll get there. I'm not saying they're going to be that way a week from tonight.
Well, and I don't think Matt Rule is going to get away from that this season. I think even if it feels like you're beating your head into a wall sometimes, I think the team is going to emphasize physicality early throughout the season. I think they're going to get better at that as the year goes on. I'm confident in that, as you say, Schmidt. But whenever I think about things I'm confident in, I more think towards that defense. There's more proven over there. And the number one thing I can say, I think, with confidence right now is that Nebraska's defense will have more splash plays in 2023 than they've had in years prior. I think this defense is going to be predicated on bringing blitzes from weird spots, confusing the offense, and they're going to, I think, get more negative plays from an offense, get more splash plays that way, maybe even more turnovers. But on the flip side of that, I think if you are going to be bringing blitzes from weird places and leaving your corners out in islands, I think there's also, in my mind at least, some confidence, not in a good way, that Nebraska's probably going to give up more big plays in 2023 than they have in years prior. I think Nebraska's defense under Scott Frost was, while it was intended to be a defense that took the ball away and created your offense with short fields, I think it ended up being more of a bend but don't break defense in the Big Ten. Like a team might drive the length of the field on us, we're going to bow up inside the 30-yard line, they're going to have to try to kick a field goal. That was kind of the standard for Nebraska's defense, with the exception being 2021, where I think you made some more splash plays. Well, I think you're going to get more splash plays, but I think you're going to run the risk of allowing big plays to teams, especially teams that like to ground and pound you, like the Michigans, and we don't know what Wisconsin looks like, but traditionally Wisconsin, if you're bringing blitzes, if that running back makes it to the first level, it's going to be one-on-one with the safety and a chance to go take it to the house.
Well, the key is going to be you may get popped once or twice a game, and that could be a big play that sets up points or is a house call. Mm-hmm. But do you equalize with negative plays, TFLs, sacks, forcing turnovers? Yep. I mean, you can get even and play even. I haven't quite decided, the realistic goal for TFLs per game. I know what I watched Syracuse do to Minnesota last year in that bowl game. I know that it may have been 2nd and 5 for Minnesota after a nice first down run by Abraham. But then there's a 2-yard loss on the next play when Minnesota is going to try and line up and run behind right guard again. So then it turned into 3rd and 8. So can Nebraska's defense offset any big play vulnerability they give up? Because it's going to be about the defense, and then the offense will come along. And if you can have enough of a threat passing-wise, just complete some passes if the run game isn't there, that'll be big. More from us. Hail Varsity continues.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. More of your comments. We'll get to those. Scott and Dion. And, wow, we've got a bunch to get in here. So, yeah, we'll do that. Promise you. Moonbot will get your takes as well. And we say hi to Danny Burke a day early because Friday is Lake House Day for Danny. God love him because he's got a lake house.
Danny, you've been doing well with the bets then, haven't you? Huh?
It's Burke's Best Bets, and it's Wiesen, baby. And I think you and Musburger are going to go Scrooge McDuck and swim in a swimming pool of money, aren't you?
Look, it's not mine, it's a buddy, so I can't say it's been from any wagers that I've been fortunate enough to make this trip. But no, hopefully we can get something to supply the alcohol at least to enjoy those beverages once we're up there, fellas. But yeah, I mean, look, I was talking to Elijah. We're in the same boat as you guys. We got 105 right now, so the lake is a necessity at this point.
And Danny, people want to be around winners. They want to be around Danny Burke. They're just, what do you think, Danny? What do you think of this Notre Dame ball game with Navy? I mean, you're in the thick of Irish country, even with one last weekend hurrah before the rest of the college football world gets going. Let's go there, sprinkle in some NFL or some MLB brilliance as well. But do you like anything here with this Notre Dame Navy ball game, minus 20.5? At least it's game 1 for the Irish, so they've had plenty of time to get locked in on the option.
Yeah, look, I mean, they're about 20-point favorites heading into this game, and again, that's expected with this team, their expectations, and just going against the opposition, Navy at this point, which, yeah, it's going to be unique seeing their offense, it always is, but Notre Dame, a defensive-minded group, should be able to limit that probably after the first few possessions. I expect it to be a little rocky, just again because it's a tad bit of a wonky offense. and it's the first game of the season, and you're in a unique spot. So maybe it's a little bit slower for Notre Dame to get up off the couch, and especially with a new offense with Sam Hartman leading the way, which, look, I mean, I think that's going to do wonders for this Notre Dame team and eventually will prove to be the big reason they get the dub in this spot. But, again, it may take a little bit of time. I'm not looking to lay the 20 pre-flop. Again, kind of like I'm saying, if they're going to start off slow, then I can wait for a better number. But if you do want to get something before the game, I think the better angle to go with would just be a specific team total on Notre Dame. Because like I said, look, Navy may have some success offensively in the beginning stages, but then they'll slow up. So I don't want to trust anything with Navy's offense necessarily. So that's what kind of takes me out of doing the full game total going over for both teams. I'd rather just focus on Notre Dame, who's going to want to showcase their brand-new offense with their essentially electric quarterback in Hartman. So I think they're going to keep their foot on the pedal and try to put on a show for all those fans out there in Dublin. And, we learned last year, don't go against the Irish head coach. Probably don't go against the Irish team this time around either, guys. So got to be Notre Dame with a team total or nothing for me.
It's Danny Burke with us here, Burke's Best Bets on Hail Varsity Radio. And Danny, when you look elsewhere in the slate of college football on Saturday, it's rough. Not a lot of great matchups. There are some close spreads, but not any helmet games, not anything that's too exciting aside from Notre Dame Navy. You laying any other action this weekend on college football?
Yeah, nothing that I'm probably going to take here, fellas. I'm probably going to stay away. Now, if I can recall exactly, whoever San Diego State was playing, so you got to pardon me because I'm driving right now, so I can't recall exactly.
It's Ohio.
Okay, yeah. So in that game, that's probably the next most interesting one, I guess you'd say. I mean, look, USC is a monster favorite. It'll be cool to see Caleb Williams for a little bit, but, who cares after that? But in that San Diego State game, I think you're probably looking at an under there. I believe it's got hit already a little bit, but if you don't mind still getting the adjusted price, San Diego State typically a team that has a good defense. I'm thinking they can show that again, and I probably gravitate toward them in the game as well, but I think maybe that total going under could be the right move. And we've talked to some guys on VSiN who are way bigger and better college experts than me who just completely live and breathe and die college football, and I know some of the smartest handicappers also have targeted this under. So if you're itching to get involved with something else on that college slate for week 0, perhaps that could be your spot to do so.
Danny, any NFL preseason or plays you like tonight in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, so with the NFL, I didn't do anything tonight with the Steelers and Falcons or Colts and Eagles. I think that Colts and Eagles game will be pretty interesting just to see how much playing time, some of the guys out of Indianapolis get. Because with Richardson, you don't really need to showcase too much because he's going to be a guy who needs to improvise and, do more of the work with his athletic ability. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's incredibly limited with his reps. But again, final preseason game, so who knows? But going down the line, I'm curious to see where this line moves for the Bears and the Bills. Naturally, I'm always going to be tapped in with the Bears games, and they are going to be playing some of their starters. And for a team like Chicago, who, again, this is still a huge stepping stone season, you got a very young group that needs to get acclimated among each other. I think it's more important for them to look disciplined and to look like they're getting into a rhythm in their final preseason game than the Bills. Look, the Bills aren't coming into this season with as many expectations. You got the riffraff with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, but I don't think that's going to play too much of a factor. So I'd be looking to take the points with the Bears. And then for tonight, fellas, I did do one play in baseball. I did the under first 4.5 between the Diamondbacks and the Reds tonight. So Williamson and Merrill Kelly. Kelly's been a really strong pitcher. Williamson has struggled, but so have the Diamondbacks bats against lefties the past month. So I'm thinking this could be a tightly contested game, both battling for a wild card position here, thinking runs are going to come at a premium, and we can trust those starters to keep it under 4.5 for the first 5 innings.
You didn't just dive all over Boston earlier today?
Oh, man, I didn't, but I was looking at that game, and I was surprised, seeing what that line was, because J.P. France of the Astros, his ERA is solid, but you look at his projection, FIP, XFIP, and it was showing that he was due to get pummeled. And clearly the 17-1 score kind of puts some proof to the pudding in that. Now, 10 earned runs certainly isn't going to help his ERA going forward, but that's why we look at some of those projections. and that's why Boston was able to get the job done today. So I peeked at it, but unfortunately I did not partake, Schmidt.
Who has been kind of your heater team? Who have you had success on, either with run line or totals? I know you're very specific, strategic with doing anything baseball wise, but there's some teams that you've hopped on early and done well with.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, and it's funny, I was kind of talking about this a little bit earlier today, too. At the beginning of the year, it was the Minnesota Twins, but it was a very picky and choosy situation with the Twins because the division they're in, the AL Central, is just so bad. And Minnesota, while as much as I was backing them, was it still is an incredibly infuriating team, a team that can't help but get in their own way, refuse to take advantage with runners in scoring position. Now, more often than not, honestly, they did come through for me, but again, it didn't come without any stress. But you have to be particular with their spots. And I was considering them tonight, too, against the Rangers, but something about this spot scares me a little bit. But I do like Pablo Lopez as opposed to Haney, who's pitching for the Rangers. So, again, originally it was Minnesota. Now I found myself backing some of these chalkier teams a lot more. The Dodgers, for example.
Danny, I gotta jump in. I gotta jump in. We're up against a hard break. Hold that thought, partner. Hang on.
You got it.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Okay, one final time. Burke's Best Bets, VSiN Sports Network, Danny Burke. We interrupted Danny because I didn't look at the clock. Danny, you mentioned the Twins early. You've liked the Dodgers of late. Thanks for staying with us.
Yeah, no problem, fellas. Hey, that's my bad forgetting the times to go out for the show. It's been a little bit, so that's on me, fellas. Yeah, the Dodgers at this point, again, you're seeing them kind of getting to that momentum spot where you're trying to carry it over to the postseason, and they know they got a big series coming up sooner rather than later against the Braves, competing to be the top team in the National League and in baseball. And that takes me to the other team, the Braves. Now, yes, they're going to be big favorites, $2 favorites, but they're getting into postseason mode. They don't, even with this big separation in the division, they don't want to let up. So don't be afraid to lay the run line. And even if you're not getting a big, juicy price on the run line, be willing to lay a little bit, because a lot of these times these teams are just going out there and absolutely obliterating their opponents. For example, I took the Braves on the run line last night. They won, I think, 7-0. So the Mets, a team that's pretty much mailed it in right now, and those top teams are absolutely still competing despite the separation they may have. So don't be afraid to lay that chalk down the line here in the Major League Baseball season.
Danny, last thought here before we get you out. The AL West, you got three teams, within 2 games of each other in the Rangers, Mariners, and Astros. Who are you taking to win that division?
I'd be going with Houston here. You got the pedigree with this Astros team. The lineup is getting healthier, and I don't like the Rangers pitching in their starters and in their bullpen. And the Mariners, I kind of got a little bit of qualm and a bone to pick with them because I was rooting for them at the beginning, and finally now they're figuring it out. But I think they may fall a little bit short. Don't think their bats will have enough. So I'd give the slight edge to the Astros.
Danny Burke, VSiN Sports Network, at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Catch him weekends with VSiN, also the Danny Burke podcast. Pride of Chicago, have yourself a good time at the Lake House, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it as always, and stay cool out there in Lincoln.
All right, brother. There he is, Danny Burke with us. Off to the Lake House. He's probably just we're talking the Lake House in Road to Perdition, where it's just beautiful and glorious, and it's this sandy beach on Lake Michigan. I assume that's where he's at.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if, after a couple of drinks, they literally bet the house on anything this weekend.
They could.
Do you bet the house in the Notre Dame line? I don't know.
That's 20.5.
Yeah,
I think Notre Dame, they better cover that.
The more interesting.
Hartman's going to be a lot of fun for them.
Hartman's going to be fun. I'm still not sold on Marcus Freeman as a head coach.
I think he'll be okay.
We'll see. I am more curious, though, in terms of lines. The USC San Jose State game.
30.5.
30.5. It's elevated, but also it's USC, and they have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and a boatload of talent everywhere. I could see them winning that game by at least 30.
Don't kid yourself. If Hartman puts up his Wake Forest numbers in South Bend, there's your There's your main competitor for Caleb Williams in the Heisman race.
Don't forget about May from North Carolina either.
He's awesome, but, I mean, you just got that mystique of, all right, USC quarterback, Notre Dame quarterback, putting up a ton of numbers. It's an automatic thing. You still do well against Notre Dame, or you are at Notre Dame, you're going to get the focus.
Fair enough.
We'll be all over it tomorrow. Matt Rule, his media session, his presser. Thoughts on that? Bill Dolman, Brady Oltmans tomorrow. And back with you at 4 on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Thanks for hanging out.